Tony. I'm back with another episode, a bonus episode, a very special episode of Women In. But let me tell you what you're listening to in case this is the first time you've tuned in. Women In is a podcast that celebrates women in all walks of life and the people in their lives who are lifting them up. You're going to hear from super cool people in my life, and they're going to share their stories to inspire others to support the extraordinary women around them. This is a space to be disruptive, forward-thinking, and change ages for humankind. It is uncensored, fun, and curiosity-driven. This is what I'm passionate about, breaking down barriers for my kids' generation. It's equal parts about my guests and the places we came into each other's lives, whether it be the Kalamazoo Wings, Mindfulness Elevated, Tony Will Coaching, or they happen to be in my family and friends circle. This one is definitely in the family category. You've heard from my other two children and now my eldest. And this is a special conversation because Grace Will is my stepdaughter. And we're going to talk about obviously the extraordinary woman she is and she's been becoming, but also what it's like to have me as a stepmom and just that relationship. So before we dive into all that, let me intro Grace. I make up my kids' bios on the fly because generally speaking, most 22, 20, and 17-year-olds don't have bios. So Grace is a college student finishing up her final semester at Aquinas College. And she came into my life at 16 years old when she was at Otsego High School. And I got to watch her in her volleyball career, which took her to Pennsylvania for college. And she had experience playing D3 volleyball. And then came back to Michigan midway through her college career and moved to Grand Rapids to play volleyball at Aquinas. And now she's going to do this year something truly amazing, and I've been highly supportive of, which is finishing up her college degree while working full-time. Right now, Grace started her first full-time job as a recruiting specialist for Aerotech, and she is cutting her teeth in sales, and I couldn't be more proud of her. So that's just a little snippet. She's going to share more about who she is and all the things that she's passionate about. But holy cow, that was 2.5 minutes of me talking, Grace. It's time to hear from you. Hi.
Hi.
Woo, we got that all out. How was it? I mean, I made up that bio. Did I do okay?
I think you did okay. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with it.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I could always be better, but that's okay. That's all right.
Yeah.
So it's hard to bio your own kids, you know? So, Grace, tell me, and I'm going to let you tell this story because the first question I ask all my podcast guests is, how did we come into each other's lives? And so this is a fun one for me because for Landon and Chloe, I gave birth to them. It's not, I mean, what great story is that? But for me and you, it was totally different. So talk about when you first met me and how I came into your life and what that was like for you.
So I first met you 16, like we said. Yeah. It was very fun for me because I knew my dad was interested in dating again. I never really met anybody. So I also knew it was a pretty big deal. He must have liked you quite a bit to introduce us, just because I hadn't really ever met anybody. So I think I kind of knew at that point, all right, this might be the real deal. And I mean, I think you were super welcoming to me right away. I think it's always hard meeting a potential like set parental figure, when you're in high school, not necessarily like the most mature. I already had a stepdad at that point, so I was kind of used to that dynamic. But yeah, I ended up having my fourth parent come in, and it's been awesome. So it's been fun just kind of developing our relationship over the years as I've grown up and like living here and stuff. I feel like we've established a really good relationship.
Yeah, I definitely had a strategy going into that, whether you know it or not. But so Grace was 16 and I had been a step parent before, and Josh and I were just dating at this point. So we did not know where this was going. But to Grace's point, he had been single for a long time, and he did not introduce people he was seeing to you. He only did one time in 15 years. Mm-hmm. And so I knew I kind of had learned from being a step parent before, like I made all the mistakes. So at this time, and even just wherever it was going, which now obviously became me being your stepmom, I was very much like, I'm gonna take a more like mentor friend approach than I'm your mom. Like I wasn't going that route, and I just kind of stepped back, and I knew that Right away when I met you, I remember thinking, oh, this one, she's a lot like I was. And I was going to enjoy it instead of like try to be, I don't know, just try not, I was going to do it different. And I did. And so far, I keep doing it different, and which has boded well for our relationship. And it's been fun to watch you navigate the last 2 years of high school and then all of college and see you come into your own as you move into adulthood, working full time. So, you know, I want to know, because you guys don't have to be on my podcast, but I wanted to find out, and I asked this: why were you interested in being on the podcast as I talk about women and what I'm working on here?
Well, I mean, first of all, I think I tell everybody when I talk about you, I'm like, my stepmom's a badass. Like, I truly think it's so cool, everything that you do with the K-Wings, with the podcast. Like, you're a pretty big source of inspiration for me. Just in the way you have pursued different avenues of your career, and just aren't like, if you want to do something, you're going to do it. That's kind of always been how my brain worked. And I think that that can be really good at times. And sometimes as a younger woman, that's kind of a difficult personality to always mesh with people. And so I think for me, like it's just been really helpful to see you kind of emulate some of those things that I feel on that personal side, while also maintaining relationships and just like being, like you said, a mentor, a parent to me. And so I'm just really excited to be able to talk about some of the things I'm passionate about, some of the things that are hard for me as a younger woman. And I think that they're important conversations. And I, you know, I think there's girls out there who could use a conversation like this, because I know that had you not come into my life, there would be, it just, you provide a lot of reassurance for me, that it's okay to be the way I am, and that it's not bad to be ambitious and confident and ballsy, as a woman. And so I just, I'm really excited that maybe there's somebody else out there that's going to listen to this and resonate with it. Because I think that as women, we're kind of sometimes put in these boxes. There's a right and a wrong way to do things, and just kind of have it reiterated that there's not. And just like, it's okay to take up space as a woman.
Yeah. See, I love this because you are listening when I'm talking, and I know you are. But it's true, because this is a classic double bind that women fall into. Like, if we're too assertive, right, then, or ballsy, that means we're bitchy, right? Or we're not, we're not demure, we're not graceful. But if a man's like that, it's different. They're leaders. And or if we lift ourselves up and say, man, I had a great week, I sold the shit out of these jobs at Aerotech, then it's like, oh, and hence being confident or lifting yourself up, but you're not, you're just being not humble, right? And you have an ego. But if a guy does it, it's like they're celebrating. And I find that immensely frustrating, these double binds we face as women. And the last thing I want for my daughters and my son is to clip their wings in any way. And now relationships are important, but why can't we celebrate what we're doing and attack the world regardless of gender, just the way we are? So
Yeah.
So you mentioned you're excited to talk about some of the things you're passionate about. So let's start there. What are you passionate about?
I mean, I'm not playing volleyball anymore, but I still coach. I have three little sisters who all play, and, I still love watching volleyball, but more so from the coaching side. I'm really passionate about just, doing what I can to develop the players that I do have the privilege of coaching and instructing, obviously in the fundamental skill set. But I know that I took so much from being an athlete, being a college athlete, that is hugely beneficial to me now as I'm starting my career. It's beneficial to me in personal relationships. I mean, the lessons you learn from sports. And when I was 16, my parents were telling me this, I was like, okay, whatever. Like, it really does translate into so many other areas of life. And so now that I'm not playing anymore, I really enjoy just, getting to be a positive influence in that way, and, teach the right way to be a good teammate, to be competitive. And like, I drew so much confidence and so much of my identity from athletics that, even now that I'm not playing, it's still there. And so I really am passionate about that aspect of it now, and just getting to try to emulate some of the amazing coaches I had who I'm still in contact with, who I still consider mentors. And to have the opportunity to maybe be that for one or two kids is really cool.
Yeah, I have this little statistic here I want to share with you that I got this week. 96% of female C-suite executives participated in sports as teenagers.
Yep.
So, as you're someone that's embarking on your career, and C-suite is where, some people desire to be. I do, or I am. I guess I'm considered C-suite now with my role with the Kalamazoo Wings. But when I was your age, I wanted that. I just didn't know where I would be.
Mm-hmm.
But when you hear that, 96%, it's exactly what you're talking about. And you're embarking on your career. So how does that, when you hear that and you hear that percentage, does it bring confidence into what you're doing day to day? Because you're grinding right now.
Yeah, I think it definitely does. I mean, and I started at Aerotech earlier this summer, after, turning down a couple of offers for other positions just because I wasn't sure if I could do school full time and work, but I'm at the point where I'm ready to go. Like, I just want to get started. And you actually were the reason why I was like, okay, I can do this. Because, and for a good reason, a lot of other adults and mentors in my life, I guess I'm an adult too, suggested, hey, just wait, like just finish out school. And I just kind of had the itch, like, I'm just ready to go. Like, I don't want to keep turning down really great opportunities. I think especially with the field that I'm going into, something in business, and because my degree is so general, experience is what's going to kind of kickstart my career. And I didn't want to wait another year. So, Aerotech's been great. I love my team. And I'm just really fortunate for the opportunity. What I think is really cool and what drew me specifically to Aerotech was the high percentage of former athletes that are working there. And so, not that everybody thinks the same, but there's a lot of the same lessons learned, some similar mindset aspects that I think are why the company is successful, and what allows me to kind of feel at home there. My boss was a former collegiate softball player, and I think she's a badass too. So it's been really cool for me to learn from her. And I think that just, I'd say my biggest takeaway from sports that translates to work is the ability to, oh, sorry, something happened to the computer.
You're fine.
Okay, it's good.
This is a real deal. This podcast, like life happens.
Yeah.
You just roll with it.
The ability to just receive feedback, and something that was drilled into me as a player. It took a while to get drilled in. And as it does, but taking criticism as a compliment. And that's something that I tell the kids I coach now is like, when a coach is yelling at you, you should be happy. When a coach stops yelling at you, that you're not coachable, they don't believe in you anymore. So having that mindset has really helped me with work, because it has been an adjustment. To be honest, nothing that I've learned in college has directly translated to what I'm doing at work. Like, it is all just a learning curve. And so when I have a day where I don't perform the best, or I screw up a deal, just being able to take the feedback, take the criticism, that's provided in a very constructive way. Like, I think my team does a really great job of that, but to take that and have it be a motivator rather than something like putting you down. I think that just was implemented in me through volleyball. And just ability to just see adversity and just punch it back in the face. Like, nothing's going to be handed to you in life, nothing that's worth having anyways. And I think that volleyball just really molded me into somebody who can take accountability, not perfectly all the time, because nobody is, but can just kind of take feedback and construction as the biggest compliment, because it means that somebody thinks you can be better.
Yeah. It's interesting you talk about college and like how maybe the classes per se it doesn't feel like they prepared you for the real world. But I would say you have an experience in your life that I didn't have, and I think there's value to it. So I want to talk about that, because you started college in Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
And this was all during the pandemic, and it was an interesting time. And then you played volleyball, but the concussions led to medical retirement, and then you moved. The medical retirement happened after you moved to Michigan, back to Michigan, and making some of these very big decisions at a young age, and really juggling, because you were very passionate about volleyball, which we can talk about, that led to coaching for a little bit too. And so talk about that experience, because there are some big decisions you were making at a young
Yeah.
age, and like balancing your passion versus like, what am I doing with my life and what happens after volleyball?
Yeah. I think, and it's funny you say what happens after volleyball, because until a year or two ago wasn't a thought in my head. And I was just so in it. My recruiting process was a bit lengthy. I was pretty indecisive. And I think it's difficult for anybody. Some people know the second they go on a visit, this is where I want to be. For people like me, sometimes it takes like 3 or 4 for each school. But I always kind of had a feeling that I wanted to go out of state if the opportunity presented itself. And so I did look at a couple schools in Michigan, all great schools, great coaches, but just always kind of had the feeling in the back of my head that going out of state was going to be a really good experience for me. You know, I've moved around a lot, but I've always lived in Michigan. So my final two schools came down to Florida or Philadelphia. And so at that point, I knew I wanted to go out of state. And I felt like Philadelphia was the right choice at the time. And super grateful for that experience. The people I met there who I got to go visit last week. I mean, those girls are still my best friends. But I think whether or not I consciously was aware of it, I think I knew that I needed to learn some lessons and grow up a little bit, and that going out of state was going to be a really good opportunity. I've always been very independent, but going 13 hours away from home, it really throws you into independence. And I think for me, I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about things that I needed to improve upon, gained a newfound appreciation for my family. So yeah, I think just at the time I wanted to try something new. Frankly, going to Philadelphia or Florida sounded really cool. But I don't know if I was aware of it at the time, but I think I always kind of knew that I needed to take some steps that were going to force me to grow and just kind of be a little bit uncomfortable, and that it was going to be the best thing for me in the long run.
Oh, I totally agree. And when you were going through this process, now your dad and I are very opposite in certain ways, and
Oh,
parenting is one of them, right?
yeah. Oh, he wanted to go on all my visits with me. I'm like, no, this is
I know.
I'm going here, not you.
My thought, I have this philosophy that you kids are like boomerangs. Like, you're going to go fly away and then you're going to come back. Fly
Mhm.
away and then you're going to come back. And I remember telling your dad that, and I'm like, she'll come back. She'll come back. And she just needs to experience this stuff. And Landon, and he left. And this has been great for you guys, and a great growth opportunity, because you really get that. Wow. I mean, just from a financial aspect, I mean, what an eye opener, right? Like,
Oh yeah,
shit's expensive, and mom and dad aren't here paying for all this.
it's
Like,
real expensive in Philly.
yeah. And just the little things. And that's just practical. It's like, then there's the emotional side of, wow, I'm 13 hours away from my support system, but it's exciting. It's this weird duality, and coming of age, which I think is why, when you look back on it, and I watched you as a parent do this, I was like, good for her, because she's going to come out of this with such great growth and wisdom that sometimes takes years for people to figure out. But because you chose to put yourself in those different situations, it just amplifies where you're at now as a young adult.
Yeah, and I'm so grateful for it. And like the duality you talked about, the cool thing, it's kind of hard sometimes, but like just feeling like you have a home away from home. I got to, like I said, visit in Philly last week, and it's always really exciting for me to go and really sad for me to come back. And so it's just, I think that's the thing about going out of state that nobody realizes is freshman year of college. I mean, you can't replicate those experiences, those relationships. Like I tell everybody I talk to, someday when I get married, like when I think about who's going to be my wedding, 5 or 6 girls right off the top of my head that I played with or became friends with out there. Um, and so it's just really cool to have those connections and those relationships, because I'm not a text people every day person, but I get to go out there once a year. I'm hoping a little bit more now that I'm making some more money. Um, but it is truly so amazing to just have relationships where you cannot talk for a couple months and just fall right back into it.
Yeah. So let's talk about some of these women in your life that are really important to you, your inner circle. So who have shaped Grace to be the Grace you are right now today? Who are some of those women?
Oh, there's a lot of them. So, I mean, you obviously. So I've got you. I've got my mom. I've got three little sisters who I'm very close with. Got
Give them a
Chloe,
shout out. What are your sisters' names?
Bella, Maddie, and Kate. So those are my sisters on my mom's side. Bella is going to be a senior in high school, which makes me feel really old. Maddie's going to be a sophomore. Kate will be a freshman. So we're all very different. It's very fun when we're together, and we're kind of getting to the age now where we're seeing things a little further ahead. And I actually took Maddie thrift shopping earlier today, and we were just talking about how fun it's going to be when we're all in our 20s and 30s and just get to be a group of four sisters with our own families. And it's really cool to think about and watch them grow up. And I think a huge part of my identity is being an older sister.
Mhm.
And they're huge influences on my life. My friends. So I've got, I mean, my friends out in Philly, my best friend from home, Sarah, some of the roommates I've had, I've been really fortunate to run across a lot of women that have kind of stuck around with me. I'm not always the easiest person to get along with. Like I said, I'm ballsy. I'm kind of a bulldozer, and it's been really cool for me as I've come into my own and continue to do so to have women who uh, just take me for who I am. They're not afraid to tell me when I'm being an asshole, but to have women who are different from me in certain ways just stick around and be people that I consider best friends has been a huge point for me.
One of the things I want to make sure we touch on of the women in your life is your grandmas, because
Mhm.
one of my podcast guests got in trouble for not mentioning his
Oh,
grandmas, and it wasn't your dad. It was one of my
okay.
coworkers. But you've got some really amazing grandmas in your life. So do you want to talk about your grandmas real quick?
Yeah, I've got some cool grandmas. Like, I mean, as I'm sure it's become apparent now, I have a pretty big blended family. So, um, like what I love about that is like every woman in my life is just so different and provides different types of support, different types of insight to me. So like I've got my grandma Diane, my grandma Lynetta, grandma Jean. I'm sure a bunch of other grandmas out there that I've only met like once or twice. Big family. But it's just cool, like to have so many different types of women who are like everybody's definition of success is so different. I see that with the women in my life. My mom and my grandma, on her side, they're both nurses. And so they do a job every day that I could never. Obviously you do like 50 jobs every day that I could also probably never. Um,
You
you
can
know,
do
my,
my job.
my dad's mom, there's a lot of, caretakers, I would say, from the women in my life. And it's been cool to just kind of have so many different sources of influence, that do different things and just define success differently.
Yeah, you bring up something really interesting, because your mom, your grandma Lynetta, and grandma Diane are all in nursing caretaking of some sort, right? And then you got me and you. I mean, you don't want me nursing you, or anybody.
Uh-uh.
I have so much respect for people who do that job, because it is
Yeah.
so hard. And so kudos to those ladies, for role modeling that, right, in your life. And that's part of what this is like watching these women in your life do that work. And then there's women like me who are in the business world, and so it helps you as you're growing up to say, okay, what is it that I want to do? And it's okay to go either way.
Yeah,
Doesn't matter, because I've got these great role models.
definitely. And I think, and I'm sure my family would attest to this. From a young age, we probably knew I wasn't going to be a nurse and go into healthcare. Like, for a long time, law school was the plan. Um, and then that was not the plan because I don't want to go to law school. But yeah, it's just, it's been cool having women who do have, like we said, keep saying different definitions of success, but different like life plans that may not align with what I've always wanted, but still get that support from. And it's just cool that I think, like we're talking about, you don't have to be put in a box as a woman. Some women want to be nurses and go into healthcare and do stereotypical female jobs. And that's awesome, and it doesn't take away from how great it is, but that's never been what I felt drawn to and where I saw myself going. And so I think that's been kind of, a point of growth for me, is just really becoming okay with not necessarily doing things the way that you should or you're supposed to or is expected. And yeah.
I love that because I often say, I tell your dad this all the time. I don't know how she didn't come out with me. I don't. I literally don't know how because I'm like, oh my gosh, that's me. And that's why I love it. Like, you know, your dad has a type, you know, is what I say, which is interesting because I know you're his daughter and I'm his wife, but you and I are so much alike.
Yeah.
And he likes the challenge of women like us, you know?
Oh yeah.
So
When
he
we
does.
gang up on him, I know he loves that. He gets pissed. I tell him, I'm like, I'm going to take Tony's side every time.
And I take your side every time,
Every
for the
time.
most part. There
Yeah.
are times where I'm
You
like,
tell me when
okay,
I'm
Grace,
wrong. You'll
yeah,
tell
I
me when
do.
I'm wrong.
But I do it in a way where I know what's important, and this could be a good conversation because stepmom and stepkids sometimes, like, there's this whole stereotype of the evil stepmom or the evil
Mhm.
stepparent, right? And there are times where I have to say either I'm really quiet and I don't say much because I don't agree with you, or I wait and I talk to you later because part of your personality and mine, and I recognize this, is there's a certain way to come to people like you and I.
Mhm.
Even though we're bulldozers, you can't come bulldoze us because we will get really defensive. And so there's a way to say, okay, I'll talk to Grace about this later, especially when emotions like drop down. So let's talk about that stepmom, stepdaughter relationship. What advice would you give your friends? Because you have friends, you and I just talked about it yesterday, where they're like, oh, I don't have that relationship with my stepmom that you do. So why do you think it works and what advice would you give?
I think it's interesting. So, like, you came into my life when I was 16. My stepdad, Al, who I also have a great relationship with, came into my life when I was like 5 or 6. And we did not always have a great relationship. Um, and I think depending on the person, it can be easier to have somebody come in later in life. It can be more difficult. I think that the biggest point with you is that in the beginning and now, like you just give me the space that, you are a parent to me, like you are a mentor, but you've never once tried to insert yourself in a way that would make me get defensive and feel like, well, you're not my mom. And I think that's the hardest part, and it's hard to explain if you don't have step parents. Like, um, it's just regardless of what your relationship with your biological parents is, like there's that degree of protectiveness over them. And I think that was kind of something that I struggled with, whether or not I probably couldn't put it into words at age 6, but with my stepdad, Al, and my dad, and, more so just coming from me, like this feeling of, well, I have to choose my dad's side or I have to choose my mom's side. Whether or not that message is being relayed by parents, I think that's pretty natural for kids to become almost like territorial over their family unit. And then when people come in, it can be hard. It can feel disruptive. I think for somebody, especially like me, I do struggle with change. Got some anxiety, some OCD. Like when I like how things are going, that's how I want them to stay. And I kind of struggle if I feel like I don't have control over situations. And very rarely do we have complete control over relationships. So that's been just a point for me in general and getting better at. But I think just with you, like you gave me that space, but not in a way that made me feel that you didn't want to be part of my life. Like the desire to be involved was always there, but it was never pushed. And it was kind of like I'm going to stay right here and then let Grace come to me and I feel like the relationship kind of developed on my terms and at the pace I was comfortable with. And I think that's been the biggest point. And now that we're 6, 7 years in, like there's more push and give on either side. But I think in the beginning stages, it felt like I was in the driver's seat for somebody like me where control is a big thing. I think that was a huge factor.
Yeah. Yeah, because it can be really tricky, you know, as an adult coming in, and you hit on something again that's really important. Being 5 or 6 when Al came into your life is much different than 16.
Mm-hmm.
And I recognize that. So I'm like, this is where, and if I were to give advice as someone that is in a blended family or is going to be, or however that looks, I would say, like, listen to what Grace just said. Let the older teenager kind of drive the relationship because again you will boomerang back. And if I just am Tony, the relationship will evolve naturally. I didn't try to force anything. Now, what you don't know is behind the scenes, your dad was like, I really want you to jump in more with Grace on certain things, and I want you to have this relationship with her. And I kept saying to him, it'll happen on her time. And I kept pumping the brakes because I recognized your personality. And that's another part of this
Yeah.
as an adult, is knowing the child's personality, and knowing what worked for you. So that's really helpful because, you called the other day and I picked up your dad's phone and I'm like, hello, it's your stepmommy. And there's no contention.
No.
It's just fun, and it can be serious if it needs to be. And that's why the three of us living together, well, and Chloe too, because Chloe lives with us, it just works. And there's no like turmoil.
Yeah. I think another, what you hit on, the recognizing my personality, I think you could tell pretty quickly, like I'm just somebody where, and I need to get better at this, but I'm really stubborn. If I don't want to do something, I'm not going to do it. If I feel a certain way about something, you know, I can change my mind, but it's a process. And, the more somebody tries to change my mind, I think the less willing I am to be open-minded. And that's something that I need to get better at in general. But I think we are so similar in that way. And so you're able to recognize it. And I think that was the exact right approach, especially just knowing how I was at 16. I think if there was pushing, I would have pushed back. And I also think that the way that our relationship developed just felt very authentic, very natural. Um, and I kind of feel that I've been able to, as I've gotten comfortable deep in the relationship, like on my terms, start to have conversations with you that have like, been vulnerable with you, but I wouldn't have been able to get to that point if it wasn't me just kind of directing the ship. And so I think that was a perfect approach. And again, just if I could give advice to step parents, it would just be to do everything you did. And, kids are smarter than you give them credit for. If it feels fake, if it feels forced, they're going to pick up on that. And it's going to make them prickly, whether they're a bulldozer like me or not. I just think you've got to let the kid kind of have some semblance of control, because also to that point, I didn't have control over whether my dad wanted to get married. I mean, knowing him, if I had said I wasn't comfortable with it in any capacity, I do think that he would have said, okay, just with the way he prioritized my feelings growing up in ways that I'm still learning about. So my dad's awesome, by the way.
He
But
is. We both love him, but I recognize that too.
yeah,
I was like, okay, it was. And as you get older, you'll continue to see it, but it was pretty quick for me to figure out. I'm like, she is there. I often call you his Achilles heel, and I know, and so I recognized that, and I respected that a lot. I did, because he's such an amazing. Like, your dad is amazing in a lot of ways, but the type of dad he is
yeah,
unparalleled.
for sure. And I think that, um, again, we keep going back to the control, but when you're a kid in a blended family and there's different dynamics going on, which I love my family, I love my sister, and honestly, I think that it has shaped me so much as a person in a positive way, like, just kind of adjusting some of those things. But it's really hard as a kid when you don't feel like you have control. And again, if you grew up in a two-parent household and everybody stayed married, like, there's nothing wrong with that, but it's not really something you can picture and feel. And so I think that you allowed me to have a feeling of control that, um, a lot of kids don't get when their parents are divorced and having new relationships. And obviously, like, parents are their own people too. Like, you want your parents to be happy and find love and all that fun stuff. But when you're a kid and you're 6 or you're 16, you can't really recognize that. And all that is going on is this feeling of like, everything just keeps changing and these new dynamics getting brought in, these new people. And it's like, nobody really is asking how I feel. And so I think you gave me a sense of control by allowing me to just be in the driver's seat. And I think that that's why our relationship has developed into what it is and will continue to develop, because I had that from you.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's just so many thoughts that were going through my head. I love this topic of control, because one of the things that, and again, this is behind the scenes when your dad and I talk about how we raised the three of you, because being a blended family is not easy.
Mm-hmm.
And although I mean, it's been we have the typical hiccups as a family, but I don't think it's really challenging on this side. It's more behind the scenes because your
Yeah.
dad and I parent very differently. He and I, our parents are all still married. And
Yeah.
so my parents are going to be married 50 years in the spring. His parents were just married 43 years in the spring. He and I do not know what it's like to be in a blended family at all. So this topic of control and finding ways for to listen to like your sisters, you know, they're it's not blend it's well, it's kind of a blended situation there too, but how do we give these young adults these up, you know, what is the word, tweens, all that stuff, some semblance of control, because we don't need to control everything as parents. Like, let you guys kind of figure it out. We're here to guide you, but you know, the control thing is just, it's so, I mean, I have control issues. Like, I want to control everything, but you know, it's not happening.
Hmm.
It's just not happening, right?
Yeah.
So what do you think the biggest difference is, like, when you look at, you know, like your dad and we don't know what it's like to be you in a blended family, right? Like, we don't know what that's like. What would you say for a young woman that's in a blended family, but that, you know, how do you come out of that and be where you're at with the mindset you have to say, like, this is the positive side of being in a blended family, and you know, and I know they don't get it.
Cool. Nobody's ever asked me that. Um, I think just again, like as I've gotten older, I think that you learn to step outside of yourself a little bit more. And I think as I've done that and just grown up and learned some hard life lessons, like I've come to see it as I have so many people that love me, and I have so many
Mm.
different people I can lean on for different things and different, you know, there's conversations that I can have with my stepdad that I might not have with my dad, and vice versa. There's conversations with my mom that I wouldn't have with you necessarily, but that I can have with you. And I don't, you know, there's some conversations you and I have that I'm like, I literally cannot talk to anybody else about this. Nobody else gets this. And so I think just learning and changing the perspective of, well, I have to go to this person's house and I have to pack this bag. And then I have to, like, I mean, there's an aspect with every kid with divorced parents, and to varying degrees of almost like facilitating communication between parents. And I think just seeing all of those different pieces of my life, not as okay, this is like, this has to happen and this is what I have to do and this is how it is like, this is, I get to have this, like I get to have so many different resources for different things in my life. And again, like, so many people that love me. And, you know, I know my parents love me because they love me, but also parents love their kids because they came out of them. And being able to see it as like, I have a stepmom who loves me and has no genetic obligation to. I have a stepdad who loves me with no genetic obligation. You know, I consider your parents my grandparents at this point. Like, so I think just having a gratitude perspective rather than a, oh my gosh, this is my life. My life is crazy attitude about it.
Oh my gosh, that was a parent's, like, amazing. It's true. I mean, it's so true. You do have what I call in the business world or in the coaching I do for my clients. I talk about that, your personal board of directors, like the people you have, and you have a big board of directors. You can go to different people to have these different conversations, you know, and that's fantastic because I didn't necessarily, because I grew up in my little small family. I didn't have that vast network, you know. So I beautiful, beautiful answer, and so true, so true. All right, so the title of this podcast is "Women in dot dot dot," and I titled the podcast this because, you know, the low hanging fruit for me is I'm a woman in sports, I'm a woman in entrepreneurship, I'm a woman in leadership, and I wanted women. We wear a lot of different identities, so I want to know how you would fill in those three dots for you.
Um, Gosh, usually I'm really happy to talk about myself, but for whatever reason right now I'm having to think a little bit more about it. I think um
Deep questions from
deep question.
Stepmommy.
Yeah. I mean, I think, you know, just with where I'm at in life right now, I would say coach is an aspect of that, you know, whether it's with volleyball or, you know, I I get a huge sense of fulfillment out of being a resource and a mentor, whether it's for my sisters, for kids I coached once 3 years ago that run up to me when they see me and are like happy about it. And, players that I've done lessons with that are texting me that they're starting to talk to colleges. And I think that's a huge sense of fulfillment for me, is just feeling like I'm an influence in a positive way, big or small, just because I know how many coaches and mentors I had growing up that I just still think about and I still reach out to and I still feel that connection to. So I'm really fortunate to feel like I can use that as a bullet point. I would say I'm not an entrepreneur yet.
I like the yet though. Yet. You never know.
Gosh, I don't know. It's hard. I guess I think a big transition for me in like the past year or two has actually been developing an identity that I can put into words, because for so long it was volleyball. I'm a student athlete, and I think that's a transition for anybody as they come out of sports. But it was interesting when I stopped playing volleyball and I was asked questions like this. What do you like to do? What do you do? Who are you? I'm like, well, shit. For 10 years, I could just say I'm an athlete, and that was enough. And that was such a huge part of my identity. I think I'm still figuring it out, honestly. I think I'm still learning who I am. I think we always are. That's probably my favorite thing about my 20s, is just feeling like 6 months ago, I'm a different person now. I'm better. I'm continuing to do so. So I think maybe we're going to have to leave the bullet points blank, because I don't honestly know if I can fully put an identity into words, because I think I'm still figuring it out. And I think I love that.
I love that. First off, women in ... you're in your 20s.
Yep.
And that equal sign figuring it out. Brilliant. Awesome. It's so true. And that's why I love having you kids on, because in young adults, because you all bring a different perspective as Generation Z. I was your age once too, but that was a long time ago. So I want to hear from you all, and that was brilliant. So I want to know, Grace, because you are balancing a lot right now, and you will be with school starting up pretty soon. So you're going to be finishing school, working full time. And I watch you, and I've been very impressed, because you have built structure into your day. And there are days where you leave before me and you get home after me, and I even work a lot, and some of what I do is at home. But talk to me about how you balance it all. And I think this is important for people to hear this from you, because you're a young adult and you've got your whole working career ahead of you. But you're creating really good habits right now. So how do you do that? What's your mindset?
I think I had a pretty solid foundation just coming from sports and balancing, so when I played volleyball in college, obviously I was in school full time as well, but I always was working in some capacity. I nannied quite a bit, which if you are a young woman listening to this and you're in college, nanny. It's a great way to make money. It's a great way to build connections. And I'm just super thankful for all the families that I was able to kind of be integrated into. And you get to hold cute babies all day. So nanny if you're in college. But I was already kind of used to juggling a lot, and it's been interesting. I've had this conversation a few times. Some days I leave at like 5:15 in the morning, get home around 8. And in college, I would maybe not, I'd have little breaks here and there. But for me, I find it a lot easier now, because I'm at work for 8-9 hours, and then I go to the gym, I come home. Whereas a couple years ago is I have lift at 5 in the morning, then I have class, then I have to run back to my dorm to eat, then I have to go nanny for 3 hours, then I have another practice and another class. So for me, I've actually found it to be a lot easier, this structure, because it's more blocked off, not running back around. But I think that that gave me a really solid structure of it. And then I also think, in the past year and a half, my mindset regarding just, I'd say my social life has changed and has grown. I'm a very social person. If you ask anybody who knows me, I run around, I talk to people, like I'm a people person for sure. But I think that when you're in college, you know, obviously drinking is a huge cultural thing in college and going to the bars. And don't get me wrong, I love to go to the bar and I love a glass of wine. But I think just as I've grown up, that has become less of a not a priority, but other things have just taken place. And I literally said it last night. I'm like, you know, I love that it's a Friday and I'm not going to the bar. And I'm gonna make my mac and cheese and I'm gonna go to bed and I'm gonna wake up early. And I think that's something that again that just kind of happens over time. A year and a half ago, you could not have convinced me that I shouldn't go to the bar Thursday, Friday, Saturday because it's fun and it's new. But I think that as I'm getting older and just kind of seeing, I think I have a longer distance that I can see my life out. I've got new glasses on and I can see a little further into the future and just kind of put things into perspective of there's always going to be time to go be social, but Monday through Friday, it's like, you know, what's going to make me feel good? What's going to kind of reduce some anxiety for me around other things? And for me, it's okay. I went to work, I went to the gym, like I did these things. And I just think learning how to prioritize what I'm going to feel like the next day versus, you know, I'm always going to want to go get margaritas and chips and salsa with my friends. I'm always of course. But if I do that on a Wednesday, am I going to feel anxious and behind at work on Thursday? Am I going to be a little tired? Am I going to, because I'm a control person and I'm a routine person. I do have anxiety, and a big point of that for me is feeling rested and just knowing that I don't perform my best when I'm not rested. So I think that structure has just been, I had a good foundation, and then I think my priorities have changed a little bit. I mean, I'm having my friend Sarah over tonight. We're gonna have wine night. It's gonna be great. But I just think when you're first getting into college and that social scene, I think especially for somebody like me where volleyball was always my life, I always prioritized school and, you know, being competitive and being the best in whatever way I determined that to be. I think that drinking and the social aspect of it, it was new, it is exciting. It's almost, you know, it's almost like an itch of like, I want to go to the bar, like I want to go do this. And I think that as you get older and, you know, you grow up, that itch it goes away a little bit. And you can just kind of scratch it with a phone call to your friend rather than I need to do this every night. And also you kind of just get to a point where hangovers last quite a bit longer. And I feel like shit sometimes in the morning. And then I think it's just growing up. I think it's getting old and your body not being able to handle all the stuff it used to. But yeah, I think that was a super drawn out answer. But I think it's kind of the mind. We're gonna cut it. The mindset.
No, there is a lot of good wisdom in that. Now, I'm going to come back to what you were eating last night, because your dad, when he came on the podcast, which by the way, right now is the most listened to episode of my podcast. So, just a little shout out to
You gotta
Josh Will.
promote this one a little extra then.
Yeah, you need to get it out there so you beat your dad. But he gave a recipe of dippy eggs. Now, I learned something last night. I'm always listening, and you had said, because you make mac and cheese, which is your favorite food. It has been since childhood. But you said, and I was like, little tidbit here. What do you put in your mac and cheese for extra protein?
Cottage cheese.
Yes, and I sat there and I'm like, Grace, well, this is brilliant. So tell the listeners who are like, oh, because then they can kind of feel good about their mac and cheese, right?
Mm-hmm. It's a little more filling.
Yeah, so you do your mac and cheese, and how much cottage cheese are you putting in there?
I'm eyeballing it usually, but probably like a cup. I don't know. A year ago, I was terrified of cottage cheese, so like it's a new exciting thing for me. I was scared of it.
And it tastes good, doesn't it?
It does taste good.
In the mac and cheese.
In the mac and cheese. Yeah, I'm not one of those people who's just gonna eat it with a spoon, but
yeah, because your grandpa Jeff hates cottage cheese, right? Yeah,
yes.
He hates ricotta and your
Yeah.
dad's dad.
Yes.
Okay, so one last thing, and you've kind of talked about this, but I just how do you want to support other women? And specifically when you look at your stepsister Chloe, your sisters, like and then the girls that you coach in volleyball or have, how do you want to support them?
I think just if I can be a reminder that it's so like, there was a long, I would say I've always been confident, maybe a little too confident at times, but I don't think I've ever struggled in a confidence aspect, but I think my self-esteem is what has really just kind of grown a lot. There's a long time where I felt like I needed to make myself smaller. And, whether it be to be liked or to maybe, I don't know, like have a relationship. Like, I think there's a lot of things I love about my personality and who I am, and that I think are gonna drive me to success in a career sense. But I think something that I'm still working through and just kind of having to grow in that self-esteem aspect is feeling like my personality and who I am is not going to hinder me in a relationship sense. I think that, I'm loud. I talk a lot. I'm opinionated. Like I have a bulldozer personality. And I think that, as confident as I am in that, there is also sometimes a little voice in the back of my head that is negative and wondering, am I going to be alone for the rest of my life? Am I going to push people away, whether it's in a romantic sense or a friendship sense? And I think just something that I feel so grateful to you for, and the female friendships that I have in my life who like reaffirm this for me, is that the right people will be in your life and the wrong people won't. And that doesn't mean that they're bad or you're good or vice versa. But I think something that I've just started to really lean into is that things are going to happen the way they're supposed to. You can't control other people, and at the end of the day, you can't change who you are. I mean, you can become better, but I'm never not going to have the personality that I do. I can mold it, and I can tweak some of the aspects of it that there is room for improvement. But just kind of, if I can be somebody that is a reminder that at the end of the day, like who you are is okay. And whether you're like me and you're a lot, like you have a big personality, or you're on the other side of that, there's no right way to be a woman, and everybody's definition of success is different. And I think for me, that's something that I've really had to learn and had to almost see through some of the mentors and the coworkers I have, is that just because you're a woman doesn't mean that you need to be one type of woman. And I just think, my sisters, Chloe and then Bella Maniki, they're all so different. And something that's really helped me is just thinking introspectively, I don't see the differences between those four and think that any of them are better or worse than the other, or think there's anything wrong with them. Just kind of turning that back into myself. Like, number one, you pay way more attention to you than anybody else does. So like, stop fucking worrying about what people think about you, because we're all so wrapped up in our own heads. Like, I'm looking at myself in the mirror way more than anybody's looking at my face. So if I have a pimple, like, I'm more concerned about it than anybody else is. I think just kind of, being able to step outside of yourself and just decide, I'm going to be who I am. And if my dad says this all the time, if you're making everybody happy, you're doing something wrong and you're not being authentic to yourself. And I sure as hell don't make everybody happy all the time. I think I piss people off a lot of the time.
Amen, sister. Me too.
I think just, something that I've really come to learn is the right people will be there, and the people who are not meant to be in your life, whether it's ever or at that given time, just won't be. And like, to just let things happen. I think that kind of goes back to control, and just being able to be present. That's something that I'd say is like my biggest focus mindset wise right now is, not wasting the time between something like now and something happening with worrying about it, because it's going to happen regardless. And if I'm worrying about it, then I'm wasting my own time. And I'm taking my focus away from things that are going on in the moment. Oh my gosh, I just ramble. It's such a long drawn out explanation. I think the question was, what do I want other girls to think? Just that, like,
you nailed it. You nailed it.
Yeah.
You nailed it. I'm telling you. It was
Okay.
beautiful. I wrote beautiful down because there's so much words of wisdom in there, because you are coming into your own and you see where they're headed, those four young ladies and beyond. So, you didn't ramble. You gave a lot of great information there. And as we wrap this up, if people want to get in touch with you, and because you are an adult, I'm not going to do what I did with Chloe and say they have to come to me, because Chloe's still a minor. But where can people find you if they want to get in touch with you?
I guess my social media. I'm not giving any of you guys my phone number. My
Yeah, don't do that. What's
my
your Instagram handle?
my Instagram handle is Grace ADDW. My LinkedIn, I think it's just Graceful. I don't know. And then yeah, I'm not gonna talk to you guys on Facebook, so don't try to talk to me there.
Yeah,
Uh,
she's not on Facebook very
no,
much. So, and then if you really want to get in touch with her, you can come through me. Uh,
yeah,
you guys
not
will.
my dad. He won't let you through.
Like, oh, you nailed
Nope.
that. He will not let them through. If you have any shot at getting to you, it's through me, not him.
No.
Yeah, yeah. He's a vault. He's a vault.
Yes.
All right, Grace. It's such an honor to be your stepmom, and I just love you so much. And yeah, when you were talking about, the people that are meant to be in your life will be, and not controlling that you and I are a perfect example of that. So, thanks Tinder for hooking your dad and I up, and that allows me to be your stepmom. And I really, you gave a lot
You
of
should
great.
get Tinder to be a sponsor after that shit. I thank you, Tinder.
Thank you,
When we get
Tinder.
merch.
Yeah, we need to. So, thanks
I
for
don't
being on
have
my
Tinder. I
podcast.
don't have Tinder, but
You don't need Tinder. You don't need it.
I don't need nope.
All right. If anyone wants to get in touch with me, you can find me at kwings.com, TonyWillCoaching.com, mindfulnesselevated.com. I'm on Instagram at I'm Tony Will. I am on Facebook and LinkedIn at Tony Lentini Will. I'm not hard to find. So thanks for listening, and until next time.